a very warm welcome to everybody. So as we are about to speak around a marketeer's gut, as we all may know that modern marketeers are required to take intuitive decisions several times in their careers. However, with the reigning supremacy of data-driven marketing, there are also times when they question the legitimacy of using their gut feeling to make, bold marketing decisions. On that note, we'll try and unravel some of the mysteries that surround this topic and also understand from the leading marketeers in the country as to how they really navigate the complexities attached with this topic. So my first question will be for Utsav and Vaibhav. Help me understand how a marketeer's intuition has a real role to play in the environment that we function in, which is immensely driven by technology. And Nimish and Ganapathy, maybe you can help us with an example where it tells us that your intuition had a rather larger role to play than the data that was presented to you on the table. So we'll begin with Utsav.
Thanks, Soumya. I think the fact that this is set up as a debate, so let me start out by saying that we're probably one of the largest first-party data collectors, so to say, at Noise, where over 1.5 million units of wearables get sold, where people leave a fair degree of data footprint, and it's insight, right? But to answer, if I had to take a side, I think the writing's pretty much on the wall that one would argue that with a business like this, you would take a stand on the side of data driving decisions, right? But I'm just going to just flip this equation and say that it's a it depends sort of a question, is why it's a debate, right? So let's try and dispel what is it that intuition really means. It's the marketeer's ability to be able to take a decision without necessarily having to rummage through a lot of data, right? But how has that instinct gotten formed? That instinct gets formed by years and years of looking at that data. And that helps you with that insight or the ability for you to be able to draw from that cognitive associated memory to say that this is how I have seen success and hence data may be useful in the similar fashion. But what we end up forgetting is that with every business, every setting, every sort of situation, the variables begin to change. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're optimizing for? Are you optimizing for speed or are you optimizing for certainty? And these are counterbalances, right? If you want certainty, you'll lean towards data. If you want speed, you'll go with instinct. Similarly, are you optimizing for innovation or are you optimizing for optimization itself, right? So if you are, depending on these predicaments, you end up taking such decisions. But the biggest of all that you have to kind of answer for yourself is, what is the risk appetite? Because with every such intuition, there is a cognitive bias and that drives everything else. So in our case, I think the room for instinct, so to say, rests in innovation and doing something interesting, but decisions fundamentally at a strategic level get driven by data.
Understood.
Hi Soumya, thank you for the question. Hi everyone. I just want to say I went to Carnegie Mellon. It's a data-driven college. It's a quantitative college. It is a college which talks about numbers, data, statistics, regression, and it bases decisions on exactly that, decision science. That is numbers. What I agree with Mr. Utsav here when he says that instinct is formed basis these numbers and practicing marketing basis real theory, and gradually as you get into practice and you realize that you're making an impact, you're getting market share, you are sort of getting customers, drawing attention, you sort of get confident and you rely on your gut more. And if your product is good, and that's the main thing in marketing. It's not a marketing subject, but if your product is good, taking risks, relying on your gut, experimenting can be easy. If your product is substandard, if your product has competition which is better than yours, I think taking risks and relying on your gut is a more challenging, challenging thing to do. What we need to do is, as Indians, as Indians, is to make products which are globally acceptable and globally of global standards, and then rely on both data science and gut to go experiment. I'll give you an example of Info Profile is an app we've started. And that app is a visiting card exchanging platform where you can download sort of your contact sheets, you have GPS, you have different things. And we are going to Africa first with that site via digital marketing. That's because we realize that that market is sort of more for more of a playground for the initial stages for such a product, which is a good product, I feel. And then we get it to a different market, including India, which is the 5th largest economy today. So I think, yeah, gut feel is important, but it's built by sort of a lot of practice and data science, I feel.
Sure. Nimish and Ganapathy, would you have an example to share with us?
Hi Soumya, thank you so much. I'll take an example where we have taken a conscious choice to not use data. For example, all our consumer inciting work, we don't use data. Because I'll give you an example. I also lead beyond the marketing function, the digital sales. And we realize that a lot of people are dropping off. We look at the funnel, right? If the customer has come to the website, how many of them have filled a lead, how many people have selected a product, how many people have clicked on the payment link, and how many people have paid. That's the usual funnel that we track. It tells us how the funnel is moving, what are the path to purchase that consumer is taking. What it doesn't answer is why are people dropping off? There is about 80% drop off from visit to, let's say, putting a mobile number, etc. And I asked the team here, let's do calling and let's understand from the consumer, why are they not? I mean, insurance is not a category where you just walk in because you liked something. It's not a clickbait category, right? So why are people dropping off? What we realized that out of 100 people that my team called in, they were able to establish contact with 8. And the insight before speaking to the customer was that most of them give a wrong number. Because they are in the journey to understand insurance, they are not wanting a telecaller to chase them to life and force them into buying. Now this is something that data doesn't tell you. The insight that maybe we are forcing consumer to put their mobile number up front, and they are at a very initial stage of understanding the category. They want to take their own time into looking at reviews, understanding pros, cons, picking up the right company. They're not at the stage which we will call consideration. They're at an exploratory stage. Now things like that doesn't come from data. So 2 places, I've given you an example, so I'll keep it short. Creativity is another area where we don't use a lot of AI, a lot of data science, we don't. And our fundamental belief is the category is complex. We have to humanize the category and we have to consume the stimuli like a human. And every time we put out a creative piece, we ask ourselves, do we like it? If we like it, we do a dipstick in our office. It's a crude way, but our hit rate is pretty decent. I mean, 8 on 10 is, I would say, pretty decent. We go across the floor. We've got 500 people. We go across the floor. As long as people are saying, "Kya maza aaya, acha laga," we push it out. So that's a couple of examples.
I'm sorry to admit, but I'm also in the wrong phone number clan. So that's a good insight that you have gathered, Ganapathy.
Interesting piece of conversation. In fact, it's a very fertile topic for debate. Honestly speaking, we're not having one. We've been averaging out our experiences, I guess. But I'll, set the cat amongst the pigeons by putting out. And I take a position very strongly. A lot of what we do, and I'm talking about marketers, because, on hazard of sounding, repetitive and cliche, we'll still say we are an art and science put together in making. That's what our skill set effectively is, isn't it? Now the art of it has not been scientificized or should never be. Otherwise it will cease to be an art. Okay? While today an AI could give you a Picasso equivalent or a Michelangelo equivalent output, but would it be an original thought? Would it ever build the new Michelangelo is the big question here. right? And because you asked me for an example, I'll quickly come down to one. I've personally built a campaign. I sell rice for a living. Okay, I've personally built a campaign which nobody thought or expected out of a rice company or a rice brand to do. I celebrate, or one of our biggest marquee properties on media through the year is something called as the World Biryani Day. Okay, now nobody anticipated a rice guy to do it. There were umpteen biryani players to do it. We started it about 3 years back, and we said, how many years will we tell people it's the longest, it's the whitest, it's the most aromatic, it's the most fluffy, it's the most tasty? We forgot the most fundamental principle of what does it do to you. And there's no database which tells you that, because I'm sure nobody else is doing this business to that scale anywhere in the world. So it's no secondary data, it's no primary data, no consumer told us. But we simply went on the fact that what makes us happy on dinner tables or food. It's about the experience of it. Can we pick up the most relevant experience and build on it? And that's how it started to take shape, and it's worked for us. So again, a lot of times, barring when you have maybe primary data and you're in bed with the consumer, you will still have to go with a lot of gut. That's where I rest.
Sure, understood. Some very relevant points over there. Utsav, help me understand. So there is an increased pressure on marketeers to either perform or perish. So with this in the background, does this allow a marketeer to take a risk based purely on his intuition? So maybe you and Nimish can answer that.
So, Soumya, yes, you're absolutely right. There is increased pressure to deliver ROAS, right? There's increased pressure on justifying the spends on businesses. But data alone doesn't necessarily assure that the spend will get justified, right? The data in a way underwrites the risk, but the risk still exists. So I think I'll just further what Ganapathy was saying, that when you talk about the access to data, there are times where you're first to market. There are times where you are doing something that's unprecedented and there is not enough data or AI to guide you in a certain direction. In which case you have to stick your neck out and take a risk, right? But I think history tells us that the most successful campaigns that either of us or the genius marketers around have run have come on the back of having taken those risks, right? So as a marketer, I think if you are able to put something out that is unprecedented, the chances of success may be slim, but the reward could be much, much higher, right? So if you ask me, the pressure to deliver, there will always be the pressure to deliver in terms of choosing the target audience, the vehicle, the medium as right, and data will guide you towards that if you have data to guide you. But I think the messaging or the content truly sometimes is the winner. So in the battle of content versus context, the data can help you set the context. But it's the content that sometimes allow you win the battle.
Nimish, what are your thoughts?
I have always been under pressure. I don't know why people say that the pressure is increasing on marketing. It has always been there. In my experience, the nomenclature has changed. Pehle, I used to work with a company called Britannia. When I used to run an ad, the person who used to love my ad is the sales guy. Because my boss will ask the sales guy, is the tertiary happening? Is there offtakes happening from the store? Or are the biscuit kind of getting expired and Nimish is not doing a good job? Now that has moved. Today, when we run an advertisement, we look at Google Analytics, we look at data on brand searches on Google, we look at is there direct traffic increasing, is there organic traffic increasing, is the direct store or e-commerce contribution increasing. I think the nomenclature has changed. And to the question, Soumya, that you asked, that I think perform or perish is an ecosystem that thrives risk-taking ability. And I feel, especially because I work for a health insurance company, I genuinely believe health insurance is not marketed well. I genuinely believe that it is at the cusp where consumer have started taking an interest in the category. And I genuinely believe that people who take more risk at this point in time are the people who will, as Utsav very nicely said, would be called the geniuses of this category. So yeah, I think you do take risk to perform or perish.
Understood. So, Vaibhav and Ganapathy, we've all spoken about how innovation is impacted when it comes to, using a marketeer's intuition. Can you help me understand how do you really strike a balance between the two, innovation and intuition? And do you feel it is absolutely necessary in the ever-evolving, complex environment that we live in, or maybe skippable because tech will literally take care of everything? So, what is your opinion?
When it comes to marketing, I heard someone say that from these panelists that it's an art and a science. It's an art and a science, and marketing has to be a combination of both. It cannot be automation in marketing is not something that is heard of much. You can get data by automation, you can get ideas to automation, but marketing, just not even ideas. AI can give you ideas today, but marketing itself is a subject that is product specific, country specific. It is time specific. It is also it sometimes has a duration till you're expired out and you're outdated and you have to innovate and rekindle your project, re-innovate and come back and take up the challenge of competing with the best in the world or the country or your market. That's where technology or automation comes in, I feel. But in terms of marketing as such, I think it's both a science and an art, and it's got a fair combination. It should be a fair combination of both, but it should not be mechanical as such.
I think very well articulated that way. See, for me, I believe that you need to use your gut to identify certain opportunities which everybody sees but nobody is interested to live with or put their neck out. Okay? We all remember product life cycle curve. 11% लोग होते हैं जो early trialist होते हैं. Now those 11% can be attributed to statistical errors if we just go by data. But the fact is, what do you make for that 11% needs validation by some sort of method. It could be data today. It could be AI-enabled analytics going forward. It could be better neuro methodologies to research and give us trends and map out how products will fare. That can be tested with a larger audience. But the start of it will still need someone to find something which exists around us. So I'll give you an example. Everybody believes, for example, they would love to have more convenient ways to kind of consume food. So starting from cooking, so not knowing cooking, to having devices which can cook for you, to having something. But then, look, there is a whole new world of people wanting to do DIY. Okay? Now that's pain. Intuitively, there's no reason for someone to inflict pain. Or let's look at IKEA. They shouldn't be in business because what's the need to induce pain to yourself and keep on fixing? Ek screw chala gaya, wapas you are running somewhere to try and figure out what it is. Isn't it? But the fact is that's the nature of the human being. So how do you identify something which can help you build a niche but validate it using the using the scale of information today you have? So I think that's what helps at one level to strike balance, but happy to hear more thoughts on how you intend to validate.
Can I just pick that thought, if you don't mind? And I think Ganapathy spoke something very, very fleetingly about neuroscience, right? Most people who are marketers would know of this, and for the rest in the room, the limbic brain pretty much registers only and only information, right? When we talk about data, whether it's a marketing message, a promotional message, a fact, is all the same to that brain. It's the prefrontal cortex that starts lending it the reason or the rationale to believe. And that reason or rationale truly is induced by marketeers by building benefits. And that's where intuition comes in, right?
Understood. So what I gather from your responses is that a marketer is often walking on a tightrope and he has to take decisions as, as and when they come. On that note, this question is for all four of you. Help me understand, how do you really differentiate between a strong intuition and a bias when it comes to taking strong marketing decisions? There may be times when you feel you are being biased, or you may feel that this is one strong intuition in your head. How do you differentiate between the two? Utsav, or whoever, Ganapathy, whoever wants to go first.
If you rely on your gut too much, if you rely on your instinct too much, there's bound to be biases that you form. The reason is that you're relying on unsubstantiated emotions or ethos, or appealing to the ethos of the people, which is, okay, a marketing, it's not a campaign I'm talking about, it's the way in which you market. Suppose you go and give free t-shirts on Marine Drive in Mumbai about, say, my website, my app, my info profile, and I appeal to the ethos of, say, hundreds of walkers nearby. That doesn't make my market know about me in a larger way. It can give me momentary visibility. It can give me sort of it can give me a push, but overall a large campaign entails a lot of data science. It does. Biases can be formed if you rely on your gut too much, such as you can say Mumbai is like the key market for me because I'm from Mumbai. But ultimately, Mumbai could be the last market I should enter because I should have some user base ready before I enter Mumbai. So it's a very quality market. It's the richest city of India. So I should go there last after I capture market elsewhere. So that bias and that gut has to have a line that defines the two separately.
How do you define that line is what I want to know.
You have to be alert. You have to be alert. You have to track your numbers. I feel like you have to see data science, and you have to see data. You have to see population, language, per capita income, mobile penetration, 5G penetration, smartphone penetration, etc.
Sure.
For in my case, yeah. Example.
Okay. Who's next?
See, I think very simply put, both are something which we need to identify. And how do you do that? To your question, you need to be willing to be vulnerable to criticism. Stick it out there and let people critique you. If it's a bias, you will understand what not to be prejudiced with. Because both these processes are shortcuts to make a decision. Okay, be it an intuition or be it a bias. We use them day to day, like we breathe, to make decisions. Okay. Now, if you are willing to stick out, be vulnerable, stand up, and be critiqued by people, if it's a bias, it will obviously fall through. But if it's an intuition which can be built in, I'm sure you will build the confidence to follow it through instead of letting it drive by. Because that's exactly the reason why today we have such a plethora of people wanting to start off businesses, basis ideas. It's not the resources. Half of them don't even have the resources. Maybe don't even understand the processes of it. But the fact that they've stood up against something, got battered in the pursuit of where they want to be, and landed there. Now that's what tells you it's not a bias. It's at a cusp of something which is going to work.
Go ahead.
So I think the bigger problem is that somewhere we are fundamentally believing a bias is bad. But let's face it, every single intuition is a cognitive bias in the first place, right? All decisions that you take could rest on the back of data, but that interpretation will stem from a bias. It could be a confirmative bias, it could be an anchor bias. All of the decisions that you take stem from some or the other form of bias for how you want to interpret that data. So I don't think bias is necessarily bad. The only problem is if that bias does not take into context the moving variables at every point in time, and the biggest of those is time itself. right? If businesses evolve, if consumers evolve, preferences evolve, you have to be able to continue to validate some of these biases or preferences and then suitably adjust and pivot. But I don't think a bias necessarily is bad, because a bias helps you shorten the journey to a decision making.
Very well put. Nimish, what are your thoughts?
The first thing that came into mind, it's not right, but I'll say it because I will not be able to move forward in my head. No, if it comes from your boss, it's intuition. Everywhere else, it's a bias. But Utsav made a very valid point. I think the fundamental grounding that you need as a marketeer is that as long as the intuition or the bias is emanating from a consuming audience. कई बार हमें लगता है हम ही consumer हैं. May not be true. I bought a health insurance and I could relate to a person who's buying health insurance. I consume biscuits, but I used to market chocolate biscuit category and I didn't like chocolate biscuits. So I will have to find somebody who's part of the consuming TG. He could be sitting outside my cabin. He could be located 50 kilometers away from me. I may have to get on a virtual focus group discussion, or I may have to do a central location test. Whatever it is, confirm your intuition or bias with the consuming TG, as long as you know what your consuming TG is. And that's very important. That's where the intuition bias debate ends. If the bias is owned by the consuming class, go with it.
So taking cue from one of the statements that you made just now, how do you really weigh the intuition of your teammates or your boss against your own intuition while making a strong marketing decision?
Difficult question. I think, as marketeers, somebody said that, we have to be open to criticism. Ganapathy said that. We also have to be curious. I think while we are the ones who put down campaigns, etc., the ideas are shared and brought to life by many people. It could be somebody in the sales team, it could be somebody in the tech team, it could be somebody in the competition, etc., etc. I think, long time back I read, there are 9 places where ideas can emanate. There'll be much more than that, but the point is that you have to nurture that childlike curiosity. You have to say that I don't know all. And there's a very famous quote by Plato which says that the more I know how less I know. I think as long as you can nurture that I'm not Charles Babbage of this industry. I don't know everything. Market is changing at a rapid pace. Consumer is changing at a rapid pace. 2-3 different categories which don't compete with each other have started competing with each other in a very short span of time. Whoever thought mobile phone will kill cameras? So there are things that are happening at the edges which you cannot be aware of, and hence continue to be a child and continue to nurture that curiosity to learn, know. Agar wo ho gaya, campaign would always have your name. So be selfish in that regard.
Vaibhav and Utsav, help me understand how do you really marry creativity with intuition, and do you feel it has tangible or measurable impacts when it comes to a successful campaign?
So I don't know honestly if there's ever been an objective sort of measure to creativity but to look at data, because it's an input metric to something that you measure, and that will be an output. But yes, I can tell you for a fact that in the insight versus idea debate, the insight is sacrosanct. The insight is the truth. The idea is the interpretation to how you want to use that insight, right? And that's where all instinct is fair, because unless you come up with ideas that are not tried and tested, you will be in a way driving, looking in the rearview mirror, right? But yeah, I personally, if you ask me, have been in a business for the last 4 years where frugality was the order. So we had to rely on ideas a lot more than the might of money to propel something forward. And in that race, I think we've done fairly well because we relied on ideas that allowed us occupy mind share with a consumer where the insight was rife.
Thank you. How do you marry creativity to intuition? In my view, I think since we've deciphered and we've sort of concluded or we are discussing that intuition is built on gut feel, bias, data, everything together, I think creativity is then a matter of adaptation also. If you are in a market in South India, Tamil Nadu, versus Rajasthan or UP, or versus India and say Italy, you got to think local and act global. So that's where I think to capture differently diverse people, you have to be creative to sort of appeal to every sort of demographic and every sort of stereotype or every sort of category of people, I mean to say. So that's where you have to be creative, you have to be sort of aligned with every group of people.
Sure. So my next question is for the four of you. So visionary marketing leaders should, make long-term strategic directions, even if the current available data is not supporting it. How much do you agree or disagree with this statement?
Goes without saying that all marketing decisions ideally should serve a long-term sort of purpose for the business. That's the whole point of strategy. But the reality is that whatever you set today as a long-term vision is subject to pivots and adjustments along the course because, like I said, time is a variable we are all trying to solve for. And today the consumer behavior and consumer preferences are changing so rapidly that we're also adapting and adjusting to those changes as we go along. So all creativity or all ideation fundamentally ends up being an iterative process. And what I started with is what I'll go back to, which is that you have to understand what is it that you're optimizing for. If you're optimizing for speed, then you run with an intuition and continue to iterate, be prepared to fail or take feedback and then make amends. But if you're optimizing for certainty, then allow for data to kind of guide you because chances are that you will sustain the initial haul a lot better because you will rest on the past creds and that behavior is not going to change almost instantly.
I feel like path-breaking discoveries and inventions change the course of marketing and the way society thinks and the behavioral aspect of people. Social media being one. So it has sort of unmasked what celebrities look like. So the brand ambassador of yesterday of say Castrol, Sachin Tendulkar, well he's Sachin Tendulkar, but other people, right? So they've been debunked to a large extent as brand ambassadors. They've been shot down to a normal person with privileges and performance and achievements. Just one thing, social media being one, internet before that, right? So things keep changing. So you have to keep track of the trends and you have to adapt accordingly and market's going to keep changing and there's sort of a gush of brands being thrown at you via every media possible. So you have to stand out, you have to look different, and more importantly your product has to be the best quality. If that is good quality, some products do well without marketing also. I believe Bose is one. Bose does not market, right? He's from Cambridge, Mr. Bose or whoever, and Cambridge, or he's donated something to Cambridge, and they don't market. It's just the quality of their sound products that they sell by. So such things I feel like have to keep going. We as a community, we as a business group, we as a business world have to make products which are global by standard. And they adapt to the local taste of, say, whichever market they're catering to.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Nimish?
I think marketing is the brain of the company in more senses than one. It also brings the headlight view. And the one big point that we've not addressed, Soumya, in this conversation, and we must talk about it, it's not necessary that the quality of data is correct. We've run into severe challenges where we were looking at a kind of data and we realized, acha, this pixel is not firing correctly. So this session is incorrect. So this data is incorrect. It used to happen a lot in my previous organization. And I've realized that it's not necessary that data is absolutely correct. There are noises that happens. We've now moved to GA4 analytics, etc. There is some bit of data error. Something is going wrong somewhere because a lot of data gets built in the digital world. And there are a lot of vulnerabilities that exist. So just by saying that you're looking at data, does it make you smarter? The answer is no. You need to know what kind of data you're looking at. It's like taking a calculator. While calculator has made speed and accuracy, but you still need to decide kisko kisse divide karna hai. That's where the mind comes in. And I think from a strategic planning for 3 to 5 years, the way we do it is there are things for which data is available and we have empirical understanding that the data is right and the data trend is expected to stay. That will make 60% of planning in place. For about 40% of the planning, we look at long-term trend consumer reports. For example, the women's segment for health insurance is going to be very big. It is going to be the next decade, and people are not talking about it. The disposable income, the education level, the single women segment is increasing in our country. Now this you won't find in data. You can't even expect to find this in data. You look at some things and you say, okay, I want to make a health insurance plan for women. And I want to put this in a 2 to 3 year bucket, depending upon when the time, money, etc., is right, I'm going to pick this. So you build your innovation calendar or your innovation funnel based on some bold bets. And those are largely driven by hunch. Every marketing organization would have a horizontal called inciting. So this gets picked up in your insight work, that this segment is making sense. So 60% of it should ideally come from data, 30, probably the data is right, and 30-40% you make some big bold bets.
Ganapathy?
See, I'm sure everybody in the room will agree, we have more data today than ever. Okay. And the next day we will have even more. But the fact is, everybody who has their hands on data, are they doing justice to what they should have been doing? Big question mark. So we will have abundance of resource as we go forward in the format of data. But at the same time, I don't know visionary otherwise, but even the most average marketers will need to stand up and find their way around in that maze of data. Okay? Now that is important to start defining on what sort of a positive impact will you create for the consumers at the end of the day by what you're doing in life. That's exactly what is going to matter. Now, sometimes for example, I come largely from FMCG. What happens is, we were always thirsty for data. When I started my career, it was like, ye bhi mil sakta hai, to why not? Okay? And it still is devoid of a lot of first party data. We get sporadic clues of it. So we still desire, if I had first party data, kya kar sakta hu? But the fact is, if I look back, am I data rich over the last decade? Yes, I have been tremendously data rich. Did I make a quantum difference in the way decision making happened? With the best of brands, with the best of companies? Something which is very important for us to ponder. So I think it's not about dissing the importance of data, it's about utilizing it to the best of your efforts without actually wanting to seek more of it. It's not the greed of data, but it's actually the need of data and the need of how to use it, which is where we are sitting. So hoarding it may not be the right way, neither is letting it go and be oblivious about it. So we are not in the business of, we may not reach salvation or something, we'll leave data and walk by. The fact is, we will have to navigate that ecosystem and see the consumer for who and what we are worth to him to decide that.
If I can, quick 5 second. I think one thing that will take the marketing function up, given that there is a lot of data, and he's absolutely right. I think the marketers should also get hands-on with some data analysis tools, Tableau, Power BI, whatever it is, I think this is going to become, today what is happening is get outsourced to data analytics team, but they're not marketers. So they come with something, then the marketing guy works on it. It's like marketers learned media planning, performance marketing. I think the next skill for the marketing teams to pick up would be some bit of understanding of analyzing large tables of data. I think that's going to lift the function up.
Do you have any additions to this?
I just want to make a closing statement here from my side that too much information is not good while communicating, even your brand's ethos, pathos, logos, or the gist of it, that means, or even crunching data too much is fine, and you leave it to the experts, and I'm sure there are many of you who are experts here in marketing and in sales, but stick to the basics. I think that's what's important. I really think it's about a lot of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, when it comes to marketing.
Thank you, Vaibhav. With that, in the interest of time, we'll have to end today's very interesting session. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking out time on a weekday and for helping our audiences with such brilliant insights. Thank you so much.